everyone. Welcome to Wind Down Wednesdays. I'm your host, Paula Taylor, and this is episode 109. So for the very first time in the history of our show, 108 episodes, I am live streaming tonight, not on Wednesday, it is actually Thursday. So I've been calling tonight's show Thrive on Thursdays because we're going to be talking about thriving through uncertainty. So tonight, we are continuing our trauma healing series, and we're going to talk about thriving through uncertainty. And there's a lot of personal uncertainty going on for me right now. We're going to talk about that. We're going to get into some uncomfortableness, as we often do on this show. And if you recall, if you've been watching or listening to the show for a long time, you remember that we did a whole series on trauma-based fears. And we talked about rigidity, and we talked about uncertainty, and we talked about how having that uncertainty in our backgrounds when we were experiencing trauma a lot of times leads to rigidity. And so what we're going to talk about tonight is, how do we get out of that? What is the healing? What is the opposite of rigidity? And you might say, oh, the opposite of rigidity is flexibility, but there's actually a deeper answer to that. And when I started thinking of this topic a few weeks ago, when this came to me, I started receiving sort of downloads, as people say, or just information, or I was pulling things out of my unconscious or the collective conscious about how do we thrive through uncertainty? Because I have been encountering a ton of uncertainty and a lot of fear in the last few weeks especially. And it can be really hard, and it can be really triggering, and it can kind of draw us back into those trauma-based, fear-based behaviors about being rigid, about being really in fear. So we're going to talk about 3 elements that I think are really important in thriving through uncertainty. And this, I think, is going to end up being something that I'm going to do in written form. I haven't done a blog post in forever, so I may actually put this in blog post form because this feels really important to me. This feels like something like spiritual processing, where we're going to come back to this over and over again, where this is a tool-based kind of step-by-step process that you can come back to as you're learning to thrive through uncertainty and learning to heal that trauma so that we can thrive. Because the problem with trauma is that a lot of times it feels like it's about survival. It's not about thriving. It's like, oh, I survived that. I made it through that. And that starts to feel like enough. When you've had a lot of trauma in your background, when you're still kind of in that triggered trauma state, survival might be as much as you feel like you can hope for. And I am here to tell you that you deserve more. We all do. We deserve to thrive, and we will never get rid of uncertainty. And so how do we do that? How do we thrive through uncertainty? So the first thing that came to me, I already mentioned rigidity. A lot of us end up in that kind of rigidity as a result of trauma. Something happened to you in your background, you felt really out of control, and your reaction to that is to kind of get rigid physically. If you're watching the video, you can see me kind of making my body rigid, but also in our thought patterns, in the way that we live our lives. A lot of us, we get into a really rigid schedule and we have a hard time changing that. And so as I said, like the opposite of rigidity, it might be, oh, it's flexibility. But here's the thing. We actually need stability as human beings. If you have children, if you have pets, if you are a person, you probably have some sort of a schedule, and they will tell you, if you're dealing with children or pets or people who have kind of behavioral disturbances, that scheduling is really important, right? Stability is really important. And that's actually what happened in our trauma-based background, is that we didn't have stability, whether that was in the behavior of the adults around us, or, again, you can have trauma at any time. I tend to kind of reference childhood, but it could be any time. So you might have not known, you didn't have stability in the behavior of the adults around you. You weren't sure what to expect. Or you didn't have stability in terms of where you lived, or you didn't have stability in terms of your schedule, or whatever it was. So what's the difference between stability and rigidity? Stability with flexibility. Stability has flexibility. Rigidity does not. So rigidity is me saying, Wind Down Wednesdays is on Wednesdays and I can't do this show on Thursdays, so I'm just going to cancel the show this week. That's kind of where things were looking a couple of days ago. And then I was like, wait a minute. The whole point of this episode, I'm going to be talking about stability with flexibility. So the stability is there. We do a show every week or almost every week, right? That's the flexibility is in that. So the stability is that Wind Down Wednesdays is a show I can count on, I can come to, I can watch once a week or almost, mostly once a week, and I can get something out of it. I can get this guided meditation. The flexibility is, on this particular week, Wednesday didn't work for me and Thursday worked better. So we're doing Thrive on Thursdays instead of Wind Down Wednesdays this week. And that is something that even a few months ago, I don't think I would have done, because I would have said, well, it's right there in the name. It's Wind Down Wednesdays. I can't do it on Wednesday. And I might have tried to rearrange my schedule. I might have just canceled the show, which is one of the things I thought about doing this week, but I canceled the show last week. We're going to talk about that a little bit. There's going to be some more cancellations, or there's going to be a hiatus of the show coming up. So I really wanted to do the show tonight. I really wanted to talk about this topic, and so why not do it on Thursdays? Or on Thursday, on a single Thursday. I don't know, maybe we'll do another Thursday show. So that is that stability with flexibility. And the best, I like to use metaphor, and the best metaphor I thought of for this is if you think about a skyscraper. So I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, and pretty much every kid that I know who grew up in a similar situation took at least one trip to the Sears Tower as a kid, which is now called the Willis Tower, but to us it will always be the Sears Tower. And at the time when I was growing up, it was the tallest building in the world, right? So it was this big, exciting thing. You maybe had never been up in a building like that. And so you go up to the top of the Sears Tower, and then there's all this educational material. And so you learn about how they construct skyscrapers. So skyscrapers obviously have to be very stable. They're extremely tall, but they actually move in the wind. They have flexibility. If you build a skyscraper too rigidly without flexibility, boop, it'll like crack in half or it'll collapse. When the winds pick up, when the ground shifts, think about places that have earthquakes, you have to have flexibility within the stability for that structure to remain standing. And I thought that was a beautiful metaphor. It gave me a happy memory of my childhood. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about stability with flexibility. So how do we do that? How do we step out of that rigid thinking and into stability with flexibility? And as always, I'm going to say it's awareness. You've got to recognize the rigid thinking. I had to recognize like, oh, yeah, I call it Wind Down Wednesdays. We do the show on Wednesdays, but like I can do the weekly show one time on a Thursday, and it's still a weekly show, and it's still going to serve me and the people that I'm speaking with, even if I have to change one night on this particular week. Or again, maybe we'll do this again in the future, because we have stability, we have the show, we depend on the show, we love doing the show and hopefully watching the show, but we have some flexibility there, because when the rigidity comes in, that creates more fear. Rigidity is a result of fear. I didn't feel safe, and so I've clamped down. So the antidote to that is not to like, oh, I'm a free spirit, and that's such a swing of the pendulum, the opposite direction, that doesn't really serve us either. It's this stability with flexibility. I have stability, I have a schedule, but it's okay if I need to be a little bit flexible with it. So the other element that came to me, this is going to be the hard one to talk about, is surrender. How do we thrive through uncertainty? So we move out of rigidity and into stability with flexibility. I still feel stable. I still feel supported. We're going to do an amazing grounding meditation tonight. I literally just came from the beach and I had my feet in the sand, so I'm feeling really good and grounded. So we've got our stability with flexibility. The next step is that surrender, and we talk about that so often on the show. I think it's the hardest spiritual process there is letting go, is saying, I recognize that I don't really have control and that this uncertainty is going to remain, and it's okay. It's okay to live with that uncertainty, to let things go. So I mentioned a couple weeks ago on the show that I was facing a possible surgery for endometriosis that might involve my bowel. Last week, I went to the Mayo Clinic in Phoenix and had a really specialized test that showed that, yeah, it is in the bowel in such a way that I'm going to have a segment of my large bowel removed. And that was on Wednesday last week that I got this news. The test was done by a doctor, so he kind of was telling me what was happening during the test. And I was completely devastated. I had to cancel the show. I had to be flexible because I knew I was not in a space to speak. I was wallowing a little bit, and that's okay. When something comes up that's traumatizing, this is traumatizing for me, and I'm trying to work through this as it happens, so it doesn't become a trauma that years later I have to resolve. And I've had some really amazing spiritual experiences that I might mention a little bit when we get to surrender. I want to kind of get through this part of the story. So I canceled the show last week because I wasn't in a space to speak without probably sobbing on the ground. So I had this test on Wednesday. The doctor called me Thursday. She said, yep, we're going to have to resect your bowel, which I think deep down I knew was coming, but hearing that again was extremely devastating and so uncertain. I don't know exactly what that means. I mean, I understand the mechanics of it. I understand what she told me the recovery is going to be like. I understand from my spiritual team that this is something that I have to do and that I have to get the courage to do this, but I don't know much. I don't know what I don't know at this point. I don't know how this is going to go for me, and that's really scary. And when you have a background of trauma, that flares everything up, that triggers that trauma. And so the spiritual role here, the spiritual path here, is to come back to your center, to come back to that awareness. Okay, I'm triggered, I know what's happening. And I'd already been thinking about uncertainty because I knew this was a possibility. And so I started implementing these steps and thinking about this over and over again. Stability with flexibility and surrender. Stability with flexibility and surrender. So the rigid part of me was like, nope, not doing this. I knew in 2019 something was going on down there, and I was just like, nope, not doing it. No ifs, ands, or buts, not even going to pursue that. So I've stepped into the stability with flexibility, right? Like, okay, I knew this was coming. I'm going to have to wrap my mind around this. I'm going to have to do this. But then comes the surrender, and the surrender again is as the hardest part, is the fact that I have no control of this. I had no control of when the scheduling was going to happen. I have no control of how the surgery itself is going to go, other than sending, my spiritual support team and asking for support, which I will be doing here. It's going to be on a Wednesday in the middle of October. So we do this collective practice every week, and perhaps you will send me a thought or a love or some prayers, whatever words you like for that, for me to have a really good experience, for me to have a quick recovery. So I got this news, I was really devastated, and I started working through it using these steps. And so I got to this idea of surrender, and I was like, well, how do I do that? I do that in meditation. That's why we do a meditation show every week. So I went into meditation, and it's already, it was really powerful. Almost right away, I felt all these female ancestors around me, and they told me they were my physical ancestors, like my genetic ancestors, and they're my energetic lineage ancestors, like the people before me from my Reiki line, and people who have done this kind of healing work. And they said, you're doing this not just for you're doing this for you, but you're doing this for our collective. You agreed to do this. This is like a soul contract. And I was like, really? Why? Does it really have to be me? Like, I feel like I do this work a lot. Like, why does it have to be, especially this thing that I am so frightened of? I talk a lot on the show about not really being super comfortable in the physical. I love the spiritual, I love the emotional, and the physical has been hard for me. And the answer that came instantly was, that is why. Because I have to step so far out of my comfort zone in order to step into what's next, in order to heal this thing that's not only been going on in my body, but that's gone on in these generations of ancestors and energy workers and healers that have caused us to have these issues. And then right around the same time, we went to receive some body work from Ken at The Right Touch in Tucson. Highly recommend him. And so while he was working on me, that meditation kind of expanded. And beyond that circle, I saw the circle of male ancestors, and they were holding the circle, holding the space. And they were making this like a rhythmic noise, and the women were singing. And then I saw my higher self in the center, just receiving all this love and this gratitude, and it was like being in an indigenous ceremony. It was really, really powerful. And at one point, while I was in this space, I felt like my whole energetic body like drop. It's the only way I could describe it. And then all of a sudden, this like intense feeling of calm came over me. All the fear that I was having about having to do this, and it just suddenly it like dissipated. And after the session, Ken called me back into the room, and he said, "Oh, can I talk to you for a second?" And I'm always like, "Oh yes, maybe you got something." That happens when I work on people. And he said, "Archangel Raphael came into the room when I was working on you and actually went into your body and said he's going to stay with you through this process." So I know that I have a lot of support. And that makes it a little easier to surrender. It's still hard. Surrender is hard. But that's why we do this work. That's why we do this excavation, because the more trauma frequency we can dig up and release from our body, from our emotional and energetic fields, the more space there is for this love and support to come in. The more space there is for whatever this next step that they're telling me is coming, for it to come in. The more space there is for healing, which is what? Clarity, expansion, and harmony. That's why we do this work. So, I will continue to update you. I'm not sure if we're going to have a show next week. I'm going to be traveling. We may do another Thursday show next week, but there's a couple weeks coming before this happens. So I will be, just a little housekeeping here, I will be updating you in terms of what my schedule is going to look like through email. If you're not on my email list, you can go to paulataylorenergy.com and subscribe. I send out maybe one email a month, usually with the upcoming events. There will not be any in-person sound baths in October and November at BioTouch on the Sunday, first or second Sunday. Those will be canceled. The first or fourth Tuesday sound bath in October will be canceled. I'm not sure about November yet. I will update you on that. I will not be doing any in-person massage and body work for probably 8 weeks. So that's about the beginning to middle of December. But as I start to feel better, I will be active on the virtual space. I might do a virtual sound bath if I'm feeling up for it with no pressure. We'll just see how that goes. That's the stability with flexibility, right? Making sound, I do that for me as much as I do that for the people who show up. So maybe I'll do a virtual sound bath. I will let you know. I will communicate with you through Facebook, through email, and I will also ask for your support. I will ask for your love and your light and your prayers. And this has made me more convinced than ever that it's time for a collective space. So as I am recovering and I get to the point where I'm more functional and I can get kind of on the computer, I am going to be starting a Facebook group for dimensional frequency expansion, for us to interact, for us to support each other and hold space for each other, and I think a meetup group once I get closer to doing in-person things again. So sorry, a little bit of housekeeping in the middle of the show there. I try not to do that, but it kind of came up naturally. So, what are we going to do in our meditation tonight to invite in stability with flexibility and surrender? You're going to hear that a lot. We're going to talk about this more. And again, I think there's going to be an actual blog post on this, because if I can get through this and not just see, if I can get through this, that's a survival term. If I can thrive through this, then we can thrive through anything. And we deserve that. We deserve to thrive regardless of what is happening in our external and internal circumstances. As we've talked about on the show before, we have sort of confused the word heal with the word cure. I'm going to heal this. I'm going to get rid of this. I already had somebody kind of approach me about not having surgery and trying to do things naturally. And I very much appreciate that. And I very much am grateful to them for sharing their knowledge with me. But I also know that this is what I need to do. It's very clear to me that this is my path for healing, and not just for me, for that collective that I felt and that I saw in that meditation. And I already feel a lot more courage coming in. If I can thrive through this, what will I do next? It will be amazing. Whew. It will be amazing. So in tonight's meditation, we're going to do some really beautiful grounding. And we're going to focus on this idea that grounding is that stability with flexibility. And I'm going to give you a couple of images for this right now, and then I'll reintroduce them in the meditation. You can think of a tree root, right? We do that a lot with grounding. We're growing roots down into the earth. But if you think about trees, just like those skyscrapers, they have to sway, right? They have to be able to move with the elements, or they will crack and they will die. So you can use the tree, you can use the skyscraper if you like that kind of metaphor as well, whatever calls to you, if something else comes to you. We're going to get into a really grounded state, but then we're going to introduce some actual physical movement to introduce that flexibility into our field. And then we're going to surrender with a little bit of sound. So let's meditate together. For this meditation, I recommend that you sit up if you can. We are going to be doing some movement. You can actually stand if that calls to you. Sometimes that can help get that feeling of stability for grounding. But whatever position you're in, just get comfortable. Make sure that your feet are contacting the ground for this meditation, if at all possible, whether you're sitting or standing. If you're sitting on the ground, then if I'm talking about your feet contacting the ground, then you're going to think about your bottom, about your pelvis contacting the ground. And let's begin, as we almost always do, with 2 or 3 or maybe 5 deep oxytocin breaths. We're going to breathe in through the nose, let that belly float out strongly, and then we're going to sigh that out, that audible ha sound. And as you do this, I'm feeling a little bit emotional because of what I just talked about. That's fine. Let your emotion flow here. If you feel like you're called to cry, let it come out. As you get to your 3rd or 4th or maybe 5th oxytocin breath, start to become aware of that part of your body that's contacting the ground, whether it's your feet or your bottom. Just feel that contact. Really bring your awareness down into that body part. You've probably been floating around in your head all day, thinking in that mental space. So bring that conscious mind all the way down through your body and into the feet or into your bottom, if that's what's contacting the ground right now. You might even wiggle your feet, your toes a little bit, or maybe move your pelvis around just to kind of bring that awareness fully into that space, that lower part of the body. And now I'm going to ask you to choose whatever visualization works best for you. You can stick with the tree and tree roots, or if you liked the skyscraper metaphor, you can think of yourself as a skyscraper with a deep foundation into the earth, but start thinking about that foundation, the roots of your tree, growing deep down into the earth, or the foundation of your skyscraper, lying deep below the surface of the earth to support all of that beauty above, all that height, that stability. Take a few more deep breaths here. You can use the oxytocin breath. Whatever you do, please breathe out through the mouth here. That allows some more release. I'm going to continue to guide you to bring your awareness down to the low body throughout this meditation. So every time you breathe out, that's a good opportunity to allow that awareness to float down through the body, to sink down into that lower part of the body, feeling that support underneath you now, feeling your tree roots, feeling your foundation of your skyscraper deep down in the earth, feeling the strength that gives you. And now start to move really slowly with reverence. If you can, if you're able, start to move your torso back and forth, side to side a little bit. If that's not accessible to you, if that's uncomfortable, then just imagine that you're doing it. But if you have the ability, just very slowly start to sway back and forth. And notice, if you start to feel like you're losing that foundation, then stop and come back. Bring that awareness back down. Let those roots grow down. Down deep into the earth. But from that stability now, feel that you have a little bit of play. You have a little bit of access to motion, even if it's only just the barest sway back and forth. Continue to feel that stability, those strong roots below you as you breathe out. Especially bring that energy, that awareness down to the roots of your body, to that place where you meet the earth, deep down into the earth. But allow yourself to sway back and forth, and just let this be really slow and delicious. Perhaps you're being called even to sway forward and back. Just let your body lead you here, and continue to feel that support, that stability. Bring your awareness as you're swaying here now to that base of your pelvis, to that area between the rectum and your sex organs in the front, the perineum. And allow that area to relax fully. And if you need to stop your swaying to do this, that's completely fine, or if the swaying's not working for you. But if you can, continue to just sway back and forth really slowly, really gently. But then feel the stability that comes when you relax the pelvic floor, when you allow that energy to drop down to the ground, into the ground. Perhaps you see yourself now as a tree in a grove of other trees, and you're all swaying back and forth in the wind. Perhaps you see yourself as a strong, beautiful skyscraper in a city along this beautiful skyline, and your fellow skyscrapers are swaying back and forth with you, stable at the foundation but flexible as they move above. Just allow this movement to take on a life of its own. Maybe your swaying gets a little bit bigger, maybe it gets a little smaller, maybe you start swaying a little more quickly or slowly. Keep this pretty slow though. This is not an exercise, this is not a physical activity, this is an energetic one. See if you can feel this energy moving back and forth. We're also bringing the energy to and from the left and right sides of our body. We get rigid in where we're holding energy between the right and left sides of the body. So we're bringing energy back and forth from right to left. We're bringing energy down into that beautiful foundation, into those roots. Continue to breathe as you do this. If you'd like to make any sound or let out any sighs as you breathe out, just feel the beauty of this. Feel the beauty of being extremely stable, being supported at the root, but allowing this movement, allowing this flow back and forth through the body. And now is where the surrender comes in. So we're surrendering fully to this movement. No one's watching you here, so it doesn't matter what you look like. I'm using my hands to kind of encourage the energy to flow back and forth as I move my torso, but you don't need to do that. Just do what feels good here, and then let go. Let go of this movement. Let your body do what it wants. Let your energy do what it wants. Maybe your movements are getting bigger or smaller. Continue to sway here as we bring in a little bit of sound. Continue to feel that strong support. Continue to feel that flexibility in the movement, and just surrender to the flow here. And now as our last step in full surrender here, very slowly with reverence, let this movement come totally still. Let yourself completely surrender to just being in this moment. Nothing to do, nothing to think about, nowhere to go for the next few moments here. Feel that deep, beautiful, stable support from underneath you. Feel the flexibility that was opened up through that movement, but come fully still and just feel it. Just be present. And if you don't feel anything, that's completely fine. But notice. Maybe your body feels different. Maybe your mind feels different. Maybe your emotional state has shifted. You are supported. You are held. There is so much stability at your base. And you are flexible. You can surrender knowing that you have this support. Allow yourself to sit for just one more moment here, absorbing this powerful energetic shift of accepting that stability, that support from the earth, of grounding down into that foundation, into those roots, of inviting flow and flexibility within that stability. And then of surrendering to that beautiful unconditional love that is there to support us when we can get out of our own way and accept and receive. Surrender is all about receiving. So let your heart open now. like the petals of a beautiful flower, and receive surrender. Receive love with surrender. It is there for you. It is yours. Receive it. Receive it. Receive it. Very slowly, with so much reverence, allow this energy to stay in place, this stability, this grounding, this flexibility, and this surrender. But begin to bring yourself back to your conscious mind. Noticing the shift, noticing the quieting of the thoughts that comes with this surrender, with this flow, with this stability. Perhaps you slowly bring some movement back to your body, wiggle your toes, roll your ankles a little bit, maybe move your head and neck. Just be really gentle here. This was a powerful grounding, flowing, surrendering session. So have reverence for that. Come back to this. We deserve to thrive through uncertainty. We cannot get rid of uncertainty, but we deserve to thrive no matter what the circumstances are. And we thrive by accepting, by receiving that love, by supporting ourselves through this energetic and spiritual practice. Stability with flexibility and surrender. Take 1 or 2 last deep breaths here, sigh them out. Crack your neck and shoulders if you'd like. And then affirm with me out loud if possible. I'm fully present in my body. I am fully present in my body, and I am stable, but I can move with flexibility. I am fully present in my body, and I surrender to the love that is my divine birthright. Stay here as long as you'd like, but as you're ready, you can open your eyes. Thank you so much for joining me on this Wind Down Wednesday / Thrive on Thursday. I will keep you updated as to whether we will have a show next week and about all the uncertainty that lies ahead of me. And I hold space for your uncertainty. We can thrive through uncertainty together. Have a beautiful rest of your night and your week. And I will see you on our next episode of Wind Down Wednesdays.